Let's turn to the conversation segment of the Looseleaf Report with world traveler, detour columnist, and chronicler of high society, Los Angeles' own social whirl, Miss Joan Quinn. Oh, Miss Victoria.
Welcome, Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, how are you?
Great.
Good. You are a native Southern Californian, born in Long Beach, raised in Los Angeles, and have been a major mover and shaker in high society, shall we say, for over 2 decades.
Wow.
Or more, both here and in New York. But
kind of.
I'm wondering, Joan, what made you decide to observe, write about, and document photographically this particular world?
I think my greatest influence was Andy Warhol. I had been a society, quote, writer in high school. I went to school here. And at USC, I worked on the Daily Trojan.
In high school, they had society columnists?
Well, we had a newspaper.
I don't remember that back at Cleveland Heights. But, yeah.
I guess you might have called it gossip.
Okay, yeah.
It was a little bit of gossip. We didn't use a lot of names because we didn't want to pinpoint the girls what they were doing. I went to girls' school. And then I took a few journalism courses at USC. That was a great department. And then I went to work, I taught school, I got married, and started collecting art. And Andy Warhol knew I was a great art collector. We'd been friends for a long time. And he insisted that I do the first interview for Interview magazine.
And who was that with? Can you remember?
Oh, the first interview? Yes, I do remember.
Okay.
Chuck Arnoldi, who was an
artist, and you probably had been collecting him.
I was collecting his work. He was very young because that was about 15, 16 years ago. And the West Beach Cafe had just opened, and we did the interview there, and I was afraid to do it. But Bob Colacello came along with me, and Andy was there. And I asked Chuck these horrible questions that got him into such trouble.
Deep waters, no.
But he answered everything, and it was a great interview.
Good. And you became, in effect, what, the West Coast editor for Interview magazine?
Yes, a little bit after that I became the
For
West
about
Coast.
10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was Andy Warhol really like?
Well, Andy was many, many, many people.
Yeah.
You would know him as one person. I would know him as another. He had so many sides to him. He was, as you say, a many-faceted stone. I could say he was very religious. He was very cheap. He was very, he was very talented. He was very manipulative. He was very bright. He was very cold.
Did you realize at the time this style he was innovating with to interview was a precedent-setting one?
No, I didn't realize that. I think we always felt we had a very hip magazine. We thought we were on the cutting edge. And the reason we were on the cutting edge is because Andy loved young people. And it was a way to show what young people were doing all the time. And the fun of it was going out and finding these young people.
He just gave you free rein?
Pretty much. We would work back and forth with each other. I'd work, Robert Hayes was my first editor, and then Colacello, and from then on.
Do you have a portrait that he did of you?
No. I have some snapshots that he took of me, and he was just about to do the portrait before he passed away, and that's a real regret.
What was he like as a boss?
Oh, as a boss, he said yes to everything.
But then...
Oh, sure. Oh, yes, Joan. He would walk up and down the street telling everyone, or every cute boy or every cute girl, you're going to be on the next cover of Interview.
But, of course, that wouldn't come to pass.
No, and so then the editor would have to call and say, oh, Andy made a mistake. We can't do it this time. But he would promise you everything, and he'd say yes to everything. Then he'd have someone else call and say, you couldn't do it.
There have been a spate of books about him, obviously, since his death, the diaries,
Right.
which were transcripts, and you're mentioned in those.
Nicely, thank goodness.
Bob Colacello has one coming out called, it's out now, Holy Terror, and then, well, Ultraviolet did one. Everybody was doing them, right?
Yes.
How about you?
No, I'm not doing one. I actually did work on a movie called Superstar, and that'll be released sometime
Next year.
Next year, early next year. I think sometime maybe September, October in Europe.
That's Chuck Workman's film.
Chuck Workman did it. Marilyn Lewis produced it, and Peter English Nelson worked on the script with me. We had worked on it together and took it to Marilyn, Peter and I, Peter Nelson. And Marilyn jumped on it. She wanted to start a production company, and this was her first production. She has a great eye, and she knows what she's looking for.
It's a documentary.
It's a documentary, and it's done in Chuck style, very fast.
MTV-ish?
Kind of, yes, I would say. Very short spurts of action. But we went to Pittsburgh and met with Andy's family and his aunts.
They were cooperative.
They were fabulous.
Probably more so than he would have been. No.
No, he would have loved it. He loved to be on camera. He loved to say, he said, oh, we're going to a TV show. Joan, you'll talk for me. And then you'd say, Victoria would say, Andy, how was it today? Joan, how was it today? So I'd have to answer for him.
Yeah, he was like that. Who would have guessed that after he died, the prices of his art would just absolutely soar? I mean, it's record-breaking stuff is going on.
I think the work that he did early on in his career made a great statement in the art world at that time.
I agree.
And then he got into his portraiture.
Which he did for the money, a lot of it, the society portraiture. Well, I read the diaries, and I better do another portrait.
You got it. He did it for himself to make the money instantly,
exactly.
Let's say, where he couldn't sell that other work. That other work wasn't selling as well as his portraits were selling. So he stuck with what he knew was going to go. And of course he didn't, I guess he owned a lot of it at the time, but once it was out of his hands, he wasn't so concerned about it. He wanted to take care of what was going on now and bring the money into him.
He was an unbelievable marketing genius.
I agree. I think you're right.
And I don't know if we're going to see the likes of him for a long time.
Well, you hear a lot of people say, well, I'm like Andy, or this is like Andy, but no one was like Andy.
No one could be. And I often think, oh, if Hollywood made a movie about him, who could play him?
Well, they are going to do a movie
they would have to.
Of Victor's book, I think.
Victor Bacharach?
I think of his book, and...
who do you think would play him?
Well, they've talked about De Niro.
Yeah, they talk about him playing Ernie Kovacs. He can do anything.
Put a wig on.
He can do anything.
I don't know who else they're talking about right now, but they have, you know, you get a short, slight little person who doesn't speak very much, and you put a wig on him, and then Andy would say, "Oh, I'm going to get a hair trim." Getting a hair trim? What are you talking about? Well, my wig, I cut it on this side, so I need to cut it on this side.
Yeah. He had like 300 wigs, I heard, lined up in his closet, and they snapped onto his head. I don't know how that all worked. But I don't want to spend the whole time talking about Andy, Joan. I want to talk about you.
Okay.
And your fabulous art collection. As you said, you started collecting when you first got married about 25 years ago.
Right.
And you've got a wonderful, very contemporary Southern California, or California, collection.
More than 25 years ago.
Okay.
We've been married longer than 25 years. But it does focus, our collection does focus on California art. And we started probably the only collection where you'll see a 10-year period. You'll see
with one artist.
With one artist.
I love that, you know. A lot of collections, they'll just have bits and pieces, but when you can trace an artist's work and his history, it's really terrific.
And you
his
can
development.
see that. Yeah, you can see the beginning work, middle, and as it goes along to now. And it got so people were saying, we want to be in your collection, we want to be in your collection. But when you focus on California, and the way we focused on it, Jack, my husband, and I, who he has a wonderful eye too, he just focuses in on what he thinks is good, and so do I. And most of the people we've collected, we've become very friendly with, or we were friendly with before. So it's a very loving collection.
It's from the heart, definitely from the heart.
It means something to us.
Not the pocketbook. And
Exactly.
some of these artists are?
Chuck Arnoldi, Ed Moses, Laddie Dill, Billy L. Bankston, Tony Berlant, Peter Alexander, Ned Evans, Joe Fay.
Bob Graham.
Bob Graham.
Ed Ruscha. And we've brought a couple pictures of some of your works, if we can have those.
Great.
which I believe are a lot of Ed Ruscha's.
Well, Ed Ruscha is one of our favorites, and the pieces that we do have are so stark, and they're...
Oh, well, here on the monitor we actually have a David Hockney portrait of you. Well, we did, which we'll talk about. There's a Robert Graham.
The Robert Graham, that's the mirrored image, and you'll see the whole base is done in his style, cast bronze.
Right, gorgeous stuff. And this is Ed Ruscha.
Sea of Desire.
Yeah,
one of his favorite statements. He's done them large and small.
And this bird, what is the title, Joan?
Bird drinks creek dry, fish gets away. And you see the creek, how big it is?
You have a great memory for those titles. Here's another one. That obviously is...
Hurting the radio twice. See the clamp on both of those words, and they're pulled. So he's hurting that word by clamping it.
I get it. The first one we showed was this David Hockney. Now, tell us about that. Also, the intro to you was a picture that he did.
Oh, well, those were just photographs that David took the other day when we were up for tea. He has so many toys. They're so great. He loves toys. He has his dogs running around and his toys.
He has dachshunds, right?
He has dachshunds.
Family.
And when we talk about toys, I mean, wonderful color Xerox machines and the latest in every kind of equipment.
Yeah.
And he loves shocking you with what he can do. And this day we were up for tea, and he had a Canon camera, and he was taking some pictures around the room, and he jumped in and took a picture. And then within a few minutes, the picture was on a video screen. And I said, how did the picture get there? And he had taken a disc out of the camera, put it into the computer, and then he went through and had a line of all the photographs he had taken, and he chose what he wanted, pressed the button, and out came this colored portrait. So it was fun.
This was a picture he did of you because you were so nice and brought up many, many tea sandwiches. Is that right?
Who told you that story?
Something I heard.
He was working one afternoon, and he said, oh, I have to take a nap. I said, how are you, David? I have to take a nap, but I'm having people over for tea. And this was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He said, they're coming up at 4. And I thought, oh, he's always so sweet. I'll just whip some sandwiches together, over 100 sandwiches. And my daughter and I, Jenny and I, made a big basket of tea sandwiches and rushed up to him, dropped him off. And he said, aren't you staying for tea? I said, no, I've got to go to dinner now. So that was part of the camera.
The photo shoot.
Yeah, part of the camera fun.
And they're honoring him at an AIDS benefit coming up, I think.
Yes, they're honoring him at an AIDS benefit, and Look West 91 is honoring him. FIDM, Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, is having a big spectacular, I would say. They're doing a lot of video, and they're doing a fashion show, and it's the fashion group, International Fashion Group. And what they're going to do is honor people who are on the cutting edge, people who live in California and who have done the greatest for the state. People hear about us all over the world, and we have a great state we live in. So he's going to be honored in that, and he's picking a protege.
Wow.
Ian Falconer will be his protege. I don't know if I should say it or not, but...
why not?
Yeah, we'll tell him. You have it first.
I got a scoop. I got a scoop on the Looseleaf report. Falconer is the protege of Hockney.
You have it
Great.
first. So that should be terrific. And I think David deserves to be honored in that way.
I certainly agree. I love his work. Are you also actively going out and collecting newer artists, per se?
Yes. But,
how do you do that?
Oh, it's hard to do. You have to really... one way that I learned is that the assistants of artists, there are people like an intern or an assistant are great artists in themselves, and they like to be around an artist who's achieved a certain status, even if they can mix their paints or stretch their canvases or do anything. And you kind of watch their work. Or you can go to Otis Parsons or one of the Pasadena or one of the art schools, And they always have a senior exhibit. So you can go through and see the work of someone very young just coming up, or new coming up, who hasn't maybe had a show. And you work with your local galleries and see who they're showing. And
you get a gut feeling. What happens? How do you know when you've really found something fabulous?
I think you do get it's personal. It affects you. That's what art does to us. That's why I think we can continue to live in this world, is because we need the beauty, we need the inspiration, we need what it does to us, whatever it does to us. Even if it makes us tense, we need something to make us stop and look at it.
Yeah, to talk to us.
So I think to us, art has always been very personal.
And LA is just booming these days.
I love Los Angeles. I love California. I'm on the California Arts Council.
Yeah.
And we have a very good program in the state, and we fund a lot of different types of art. We have we cross over not only just visual arts, but music and poetry and writing. And so I think we cover it very well. And I'm on the Beverly Hills Art Commission too. So I think all of the little communities are becoming very art conscious.
Right. It seems like we're undergoing some kind of a renaissance, which I feel is wonderful.
I hope so. I was in Madrid not long ago, and that's pretty much of a new community from the 60s, you know, when the king started taking over. And they have down the avenues sculpture on the corners in front of buildings, and they've really gone all out to make it important.
That's happening more in Los Angeles these days, and of course the festival, the LA Arts Festival, is happening, which is a potpourri of everything going on. And there's so much to talk to you about. You're always on the go. You do chronicle for various magazines, Detour, Angeles, Venice, and checking out the scenes all the time. You're by invitation only?
This magazine is from Dallas.
Yeah.
And it reminded me so much of how Interview was when Interview first started.
Yeah, because it's gone through its changes now. Everyone's tried to imitate it.
It's slick.
Yeah.
It's slick. It's grown up. It's a real magazine. When we were working on it, it was a pretend. Let's pretend. Let's have a good time. Let's enjoy it. Let's find things. And let's not worry about how it looks. And this magazine has that same spirit. Let's just look for something. Let's do it. We're all making mistakes, but let's give it a chance. And that's why it's fun to do things for them.
And you're out there, what? Every function going on in town you're covering.
Oh, yes, Victoria. And I see you at every one of them, too.
Oh, yeah. I don't know when you have time to get your hair done in that gorgeous Zandra Rhodes-inspired do.
Well, Zandra did inspire this, actually, years ago in London. William Escalera puts the color on all the time.
It's gorgeous. It's your trademark.
It's a very old trademark. It didn't come in the punk.
You were before punk.
Yes, I was before
You're
punk.
the original punk.
Yes.
Also in your collection, you've got many portraits of yourself, and you've got this, if we can have a close-up on this fabulous photograph, which is Joan Quinn surrounded by the many portraits of herself. Who did this, Joan?
Tommy Calloway was out here doing a shoot for Art and Antiques, and I was writing the piece for him. And he, just at the end of
If you can lower the camera just a tad. Oh.
At the end of the shoot, he wanted to do a portrait of me with the portraits. So we piled everything together, and we have the Sylvia Schaap and the Ned Evans in the back, and the Richard Bernstein who did the covers of Interview. You can recognize that. And an Ian Faulkner bust in the center. I didn't pose for it.
You don't have to.
I did not pose for that.
It looks good.
Duggie Fields, Peter Lee Ashkoff. Here's the late Antonio, graphic artist from New York.
Right.
And the purpose of doing Duggie Fields in the middle, the purpose of doing the portraits was to expand the collection in a way and to have artists from all over the world be able to become a part of our collection, because we felt very pure in having the California.
Right, right.
And this way, we had interpretations by other people. Don Bachardy in front.
It's a wonderful testament to your benevolence and furthering of the art scene here and in the world, Joan.
Well, it's hard. I think there's so many things that come into your life that you need to concentrate on something that does bring
beauty and joy and a
really
little bit of harmony,
really
and peace.
True.
Which is what you do, and I'm so glad you could come down and visit.
Oh, it's over?
I can't believe it.
Oh,
we are out of time.
Oh, it can't be over.
You'll have to come back, will you?
Thank you.
You will, because we're actually going to be doing a fairly regular segment called the Joan Quinn's by Invitation Only.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan, Agajanian Quinn. And thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week. You're beautiful.
Are you kidding?
No. I know.